Toby Kebbell plays Sean Turner on Servant. I'm Riley Chow, and this is kind of a strange thing to ask about a main character of a show, but how much agency does Sean have? Because I feel like he puts up with a lot as the series has gone on. People keep getting, killed inside or just outside his house.
Right.
Uh, what do you think about all that?
You know, it's a it's a role where he's very blinkered. So he had a family and that went away. And I think from all the research I did and all the documents I read and things that people sent to me about people who had lost children and amazing how many people I discovered had similar circumstances. Um, it seems that it's such a big blow. You can't imagine. Sorry, I'm going to turn that thing off because I was about to go off. You can't imagine how devastating it is. So I think the way Sean is all the time is that he doesn't want to lose Dorothy because then he's lost everything. And that's probably when it would actually hit him. So he's not really dealing with it at all. He's blinkered by everything. Everything seems to be done just behind his back. That's the suspended belief I have to play, which is that just behind that door or just down those stairs, something terrible is happening. The thing I found very difficult to play was watching my wife kidnap the babysitter. But, I also wanted her to be happy. And there's this belief that Sean, I guess, feels at that point like he kind of owns Leanne, like she kind of ran away. She didn't really leave. She didn't hand in her resignation, and she just ran off. So it's a lot of suspended belief, but it's not so much that it's just impossible for me to comprehend. But as the audience, of course, you're seeing everything, and you're like, how would he not notice? This is a person stuck in the floorboards, so it's tricky.
And at this point, do you think that he should stay with Dorothy?
It gets harder and harder to see why Sean's there. But there's so much invested in a relationship that, of course, many times people should not be there anymore or should not, you know, stay with that person. And, they're just too invested. There's too much put in. Me personally, Toby Kebbell, no, he should have divorced her years ago. I mean, the whole thing's a mess. It's just a terrible, horrible mess. But I can understand, even a crappy relationship, which this kind of isn't. In a way, they're not really having a relationship. Their relationship is just trying to figure out this problem. And I think he's too involved in the puzzle to really see what's good for him, you know.
Yeah, I wonder what his end game is at this point. What does he ultimately want to have happen in their family dynamic?
Yeah, and that shifted for me. It's a great question because it shifted for me. What did Sean ultimately want? And then season 2, halfway through towards season 3, which we're just finishing now. It was this, no, Sean totally believes. He totally believes in it. He's invested. He has this religious belief system now. And that was a very hard shift for me. That wasn't something I was necessarily happy about to play that. And I had to wear a bandage for 10 episodes. And I was kind of like, what is my role? And I felt season 2 a little bit like one of my favorite movies, Big Trouble in Little China, God, Kurt Russell. It's just like, what's going on? What's going on? And that's how I felt all the way through the episode. So that was what my script was, and that's what I was playing. But ultimately, I think what he always wanted, which he's misguided about, is he wants his family. He wants to have that family that he had just for a small period of time. And he doesn't want to believe that his wife killed his child through negligence and exhaustion. And he doesn't want to think he's to blame for not noticing that she was exhausted, because it's the most exhausting thing anyone does, is being a mother. It's just being a parent at all. But being a mother, you see how much it takes from the woman, from the mother, to give to this child. You sacrifice everything. So the fact that he didn't see that he didn't notice, that he stayed selfish, that he saw a career opportunity and didn't just pack everyone on a flight and all go to the place, but took the chance to take a break. He blames himself. That's a big mistake. That's a huge mistake. He shouldn't have left them at all. And if he did, he should have taken them with him. So he's to blame as much as she's to blame in many ways, because you become a partner. It's all about the other person. It's all about the other people. So it's never about you. It's about your wife and your child. And for her, it's about her husband and the child. And for the child, it's just glory. It's just, I've got to be looked after. So that's I think ultimately what's pinning him to it, and really giving him this false belief that he has to keep his family intact. What would be great for him actually is just to face it and go through that process. That's what would be useful for him. But that's the sad part of it, that he's just never given himself that opportunity just to say, this is trash. I have to start somewhere deep down below,
I feel like I'm asking too many plot questions, but I guess there's just so much there. By the end of the first season, he's lost his sense of feeling and taste. He gets it back in the middle of season 2. What's going on there?
A lot of times, actually, there's a lot of great books about trauma causing huge problems to the body. So I know that there's a huge storyline about, is this person supernatural? Do they have powers? And it's an M. Night Shyamalan show. And I would rather always play that there are realities to this. Trauma can absolutely cause you to have a cough you can't get rid of, or a thing. It does affect the body. The body really holds on to those traumas. So that's what I was playing, that it wasn't, a curse being placed on me. But of course, that's what I have to play in order for the story to be, entertaining and authentic, rather than just, wait, I'm cursed. That's not, I don't know the person who would do that. So if that's what the show is, then that's great. But Sean would always have believed, no, I went and I saw a doc, and he said, trauma can sometimes play out this way. And that's why it was very difficult then to suddenly play all of the belief. He totally believes in it. But of course, that's also, another stage of trauma. So he's probably the only one going through any stages of grief.
You mentioned the research that you did for this role. Can you talk about, what kind of preparation goes into the performance on like a series, but also an episodic level?
With a series, you don't know if you're lucky enough to get a second season, or complete the season at all. So we had 10 episodes, and that's what we were doing. And I really wanted to research and figure out, why is she not arrested? Is that a crime? Is that not a crime? How does this occur? What is it? And I came across some amazing things. And my brother, my big brother, Jim, he sent me a great thing from a paramedic. It was actually, he had written a poem about the condition of SIDS, the sudden infant death syndrome. And it was really so touching and sad. It was about this couple who had rolled over on their kid in bed, ostensibly, but rather than it be that's what happened, in a more kind of authentic way, he basically put it down to sudden infant death syndrome. And it just had a beauty, and it was so tragic and horrible. But I don't know that, and he said this was the 15th time he had come across this situation. And I think it's too much for anyone to bear, that they have been so exhausted that they became negligent. And so that started to give me some kind of hope that this was a story that was authentic, that had, resonance, that was a real story. It could be told, forgetting the supernatural element, because, I'm not that person. And it didn't seem a guy who was Sean, and the restaurants I worked in here in Philadelphia, staging, which is basically just you're a guy who gets in the way. I'm not going to claim I was in there cooking up great dishes for anybody, but all of that just felt, like that wasn't his thing. And it was in the script. He didn't believe it. He didn't believe it. So I needed to find something that was, authentic in other ways, that had just that kind of thing. Why would he miss this? How does he forgive this? What does he do? And so then going into my own, Sean's own, system of where is he to blame? And that thing that he doesn't want to leave the house. In season 1, we pretty much tried to keep him in the house the whole time. She has to force him to leave, or she has to be with him when he leaves. And that trust he has to get in the nanny, that thing that he just does not trust her at all. She's jiggling around a doll. It was all of that kind of research. So yeah, there's just a lot of very sad moments for people. Guys who went to the gym, left their baby in the car, forgot to drop it off at preschool. Things where you're like, what? How would you possibly do that? When you have a baby, your exhaustion level reaches something you've never experienced before. And it starts to seem as traumatic and horrible, but somehow tangible. There's just this tangibility to, I've never, ever put my keys in the refrigerator. I've never. But, new parents do stuff like that. So it just was that thing of, this is not something you comprehend, that you think you know about because you see kids. You were born and your parents were, your brothers got kids, but you don't know until you're really there and you really see parents who have newborn kids, how truly exhausted they are. And these are people who can afford help. Even those people, they're exhausted. We don't do enough for parents. That's the truth. So yeah, that really helped me to play what was authentic in season 1. So yeah, the episode to episode, if it doesn't mesh and I can't find an article about it or somebody speaking about it, even in like a mommy's blog, I bring it up, but I'm like, this just doesn't, I can't understand this. This doesn't make sense. So sometimes we make adjustments, and that's what's so great, about the show, is that there's always that room for artistic interpretation. So, it's not just like, no, this is, well, she's a ghost, which she's not. I'm not saying that, but I'm just, that's not ever the reasoning. So there's always conversations available.
Yeah, and you do have more ownership over the characters since you are playing him across so many seasons. So I'm wondering how you came to television in the first place, since we had seen you doing films for most of your career, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be bold and probably a bad-faced lie to say, no, yeah, I was in film and I wasn't feeling like film. The truth is, when I get a script, if it's a great story and I go, oh, I know, I could absolutely comprehend that. Or I read it and then I go, wait, does that even sound real? And I do some research. I'm surprised. Or it's a story I'm like, I didn't even know that was real. I didn't know that happened. So like I'll do someone's short film. I did a great short film I enjoyed a lot called The German, which is about how the Irish were neutral during the Second World War. And it was something I didn't know, had no clue about. And it's a Spitfire pilot chasing down a guy and flying through the sky. And then they land in Ireland and they're both just kind of in a limbo. They're not allowed to leave. They're not allowed to go back to the war. They're in limbo. So it was a fascinating story for me. So anytime I read something that's a great story, I'm desperate to do it. Desperate. I did a wonderful Danish film a couple of years back, just before I started on this show, called, it's a very long title about Daniel, The Moon is in Your Eyes or something like that. But it was a great story. It was just a beautiful, beautiful story. And everyone I met just was interested in telling this great story. And actually my role wasn't my favorite role. There were other roles in it. And I was like, this is great. But I was passionate about being part of it. So when I did Black Mirror years back, I was Jesse Armstrong, who's gone on Succession, such a brilliant show. And he'd done so many great things before that in the UK, with Chris Morris and all those great people. So his writing was just so good. Truth be told, when I read Prince of Persia, it was written by Boaz Yakin, who had done one of my favorite movies, Fresh, which was it was a brilliant script. That's not the script we shot. But the original script I read was tremendous. It was so good. And Garciv was this character who was this warmonger who just was a tyrant. And I basically had to just be like, I'm angry. And there's no explanation for it, So everything I read is brilliant. The Counselor that I did with Ridley Scott, of course, how would you not do a job with Ridley Scott? But I wasn't offered that job. I had to audition and I had to go through the processes of trying to get the job. But I really wanted to do it because it was great. And then when they changed the one thing that you can't tell that I Kidnapped Penelope Cruz's character. It's just a weird kind of guy in a pink suit in a restaurant. So, you don't know how things are going to turn out. And it's kind of a miracle when anything turns out. And it's really entertaining, beautifully shot, and very brilliant. And that's why people like Fincher are so lauded, because his justice stuff's brilliant, interesting, intelligent, and beautifully shot. Because it's kind of a miracle when that comes together. And so it's always just a good story. Now, I try to be business savvy and go, well, who's the DP and who's the costume and who's the hair and makeup? And sometimes you can't. Sometimes you get lucky and you find two incredible hair and makeup and they take great care of you and you do everything you can to try and work with them forever. But it's just very hard. The whole industry is very tricky. It's very finicky. It's very fine. So, yeah, I'm a jobbing actor. I'm not a, movie star. So I'll take a role if it's a good story,
Well, yeah, this has been very interesting. So, Toby, thanks very much for chatting with Gold Derby today.
Pleasure, man. Thank you for your time. Great background, by the way. It's spooky. It's truly spooky. Thank you, man. Have a good one.